take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me today. Super excited that you've chosen to stop by today and give me, and I really do believe it is a give. You've given me your moments today. And let me tell you, I never, ever, ever, ever want to take that for granted. I think we have a gem today. I really believe that. I don't know about anybody else. I've always wondered about how things overseas maybe went. We saw a lot of things on the news the last, 10 years or so in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I always wondered as a Marine kid, MK, not a missionary kid, but a Marine kid. My dad spent 20-ish years in the Marine Corps, born on a military base in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I always kind of wondered what was really happening there. Now, let me tell you, my guest today is not necessarily, quote unquote, the expert. Like, he doesn't know everything, every little nuance that went on, but he can share his personal experience of what went on. Help me welcome in from the great state of Illinois, Eric. Eric, how are you today?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm great. Now, Army guy, so gonna have a hard time getting around that with my Marine background, but we're gonna endure. We are an army of one, so we're going to be one today, right, Eric?
Yeah, I don't think the Army is using that slogan in a while. But, yeah.
Do you know what their slogan is currently? Do you know?
I have no idea. I don't follow that anymore. I think in my 5 years, it changed like 3 times. Yeah, I didn't follow it.
I mean, I am laughing a little bit. The Marine Corps has been the few, the proud, the Marines for like as long as I can remember. That's 40-ish 3 years. We don't change our brand. Just saying, Army. Just, words of the wise. But help me with this. I love to ask this question. What size shoes do you wear?
Like a 12, something like that.
All right. And is there a certain style or brand you maybe like more than another?
ASIC or whatever that's called. It's a cheap shoe. They're comfortable for me.
Hey, I wear ASICs too. I don't know if you've ever heard of these ones, being an ASIC guy. Noosa. And they're kind of fun shoe. They're a triathlon shoe. So they can kind of actually like absorb water, but like they have this technology that kind of pushes it away. It's weird. It's super weird.
When I was in basic training, that was the shoe that they kind of issued you for your first pair. And I just felt comfortable running in those. So I just never steered away from it. And I use it now just to walk everywhere and my feet feel comfortable.
Hey, it's all about the comfortability, especially feet. They say 2 things to invest in: great pair of shoes, which I'm, a fan of, and then an even better bed.
Yep.
So if you invest in those 2 things, you're doing kind of amazing things for your health. Just saying. You're on the right track.
Probably one of the ones that actually like my bed to be real stiff. I don't know. It's just a weird feeling. I sleep better.
I want soft and fluffy, but I want my pillow hard. Is that weird?
A little bit, yeah.
It's like a contradiction there, I feel like. But getting back to this, one of the things that you shared with us is that you did 2 different tours in Iraq. What on earth led to that decision?
Coming out of high school, I really didn't do so good on my ACTs and stuff like that. So I was able to get into Northern Illinois University. I ended up rooming with my best friend, which was probably the first mistake that I did. It wasn't really partaking in school activities. It was more of the partying and going out and things like that. I ended up getting kicked out of Northern. Yeah, I didn't keep up with the GPA that I had to. At that point, my mom gave me an ultimatum. It's like, you're going to stay home, you're going to go to work and go summer school, community college. And I really didn't want to do that. My roommate actually ended up joining the Army a couple months before this. So I knew a little bit about it after having the recruiters over and hearing what they had to say. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go to the recruiting station and see what more information I could get. And I ended up making my decision, telling my mother, and she really wasn't too fond of that either. She tried to stop me a few times, even going down to the recruiting station and telling them that I'm the only kid. You can't take my son. And they're saying, well, he's volunteering. There's really nothing you could do. And my mom was pretty devastated about that. I needed to get away. I needed to have a fresh start in my life. And that's what I ended up doing.
That's crazy. To me, let me be candid here. As I mentioned already kind of in our opening, my dad was in the Marine Corps. And I, as a kid, always thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. That's what my next step's going to be, is I'm going to go be a Marine. I'm going to be like my dad. And the more and more I thought about it as I, hit those high school years, I was like, I don't I don't want to do that. I really was kind of done with the Marine Corps. I was kind of mad at the Marine Corps as if it was a person, because I felt like he took my dad away. Even though much like you, my dad made the choice to go to Vietnam and made the choice to go to, enter in. He wasn't drafted or anything like that back in those days. But I'm always fascinated by those that make that choice because of that reason. And so that's why I'm wondering. So school wasn't your thing, and so what did the Army give you in that respect, or maybe that line that you found, or maybe that you were looking for?
When I was younger, I had really low self-esteem, almost like rock bottom. I just really had no confidence in myself and everything in that matter. Even some kind of family members would tell me the same thing. But then I ended up joining. Obstacle that I had when I went in. So I went in at 19, 6'3", about 270. And according to the military standards, I was severely overweight. I was overweight almost by 90 pounds. I had to get over that hurdle in basic training, being the biggest guy. I was always being hounded. I kind of was used to it because I played basketball and sports throughout high school, and I was kind of used to that coach in your face mentality. So the drill sergeant thing really wasn't a big bother to me. I just used it as motivation. At the end of basic training, so it was maybe about 16 weeks, I actually lost about 70 pounds in those 16 weeks. I don't know, my confidence just started building halfway through. The first month was probably like hell. I felt like I really couldn't do anything. But after that, I started enjoying myself and seeing the progress that I was doing and the confidence that I was building. That was one of the main things that helped me during that time and has actually made me who I am today.
So you talk about self-esteem and being rock bottom, your words. What led to you have such a low self-esteem or a low view of yourself? What do you think caused that, or maybe led to that?
Probably a number of things. I wasn't the most popular person, but everyone knew me because I always friends in every type of group. I was more of a shy kid, not really putting myself out there. But even though everybody knew me, I was just a weird aspect to it because I played sports and I was into everything. Didn't have the best childhood. I mostly kept to myself a lot of the times. The Army really gave me a better look on life, how to be more confident, something that I'll always be grateful for.
So one of the other things you shared with us was this date, which let me tell you, I love that you have it down to the exact date. That's always such a powerful thing. It's not, I think it was around this time or back when I was 5, roughly. No, you have it down to December 25th, 2006.
Well, I also have the time. So
wow, the time even. Okay, even better. So take me back to that Christmas, what we would consider in the States Christmas Day. But for you guys, it was not a Christmas Day maybe of joy and presents and fanfare.
No, our mission, I was a combat engineer. When I joined, combat engineers their description is building fortifications and clearing minefields. That was kind of like the Vietnam, World War II, World War I description. In the Iraq War, there really wasn't that minefields, or it was more of in Afghanistan. They decided to use combat engineers to be route clearance. So we would find IEDs on the sides of the roads. And that was our mission. For 6 days out of the week, we would go out on mission, find these IEDs and help clear them out. Christmas Day, no one was out. The entire theater there said that no one's going to go out. It's Christmas Day, day of rest. They decided that they wanted us to go out. And we really protested it because what is the point of us going out and clearing the roads if no one's going to be out? I remember it being a huge deal, fighting back and forth for us to go out. And we ended up having a night mission that day, and so we decided to go out. We ended up going in one of the more rougher parts of Iraq. We ended up getting hit with an EFP, which is a more sophisticated IED, and we ended up losing soldiers that night.
So we got some military terms here. Now, I know some of them for those that maybe are not as well versed in military stuff. So help me, what is an IED?
It's an improvised explosive device.
Okay.
So it's basically anything that's put together to make an explosive.
The other thing you said was a heavier duty IED. What was that?
Called an EFP. An IED that's set off by an infrared laser. So this laser is on and it detects any heat that goes by it. So these EFPs will be kind of pointed at an angle, catch the heat of our engine, and that would set off these EFPs. But these EFPs were basically copper cylinders that were maybe 12 inches in diameter. So think of like a giant bullet. This particular EFP was actually embedded into the curve. So what they did was they took a chunk of the curb, molded this EFP to look like the curve, and replaced it. And it's very difficult to see. That's why we go down the road about 5 miles an hour to try to find these things. But these IEDs and EFPs are so well made that a lot of times you're not able to see them. And this particular night, we didn't catch it.
How many soldiers did you lose that night?
We lost 3, and one was severely wounded.
How well did you know those individuals?
They were like brothers. I didn't go to basic training with those guys. I was with them for over a year before the incident. So, I mean, we all lived together, basically like brothers.
There would be those, and again, this isn't necessarily a political podcast because that's not what I do. I have heard, and I think I even shared with you in some of our preliminary talks, that I've had friends come back and say, why were we there? What did we do? Why did we lose all these brothers? Your words. Why did I lose my brothers? For what? Now, again, I know you're not a political strategist. As far as I know, don't have any political aspirations. You're here of your own free volition. But in your opinion, why were we there?
From what I could see, I guess what the popular opinion is, we were there for the oil. We're definitely not there for the oil. We would go through gas unbelievably. We would fill our tanks up before mission and fill our tanks up after mission. We were going through so much that there's no point of, and we're not the only people in theater too doing this. So that whole thing, I really never believed. I know why we were there. What our mission was to do was to protect U.S. forces and allied forces. It got to a point so much that we were actually being videoed. We had a special forces unit come up to us one time and said, hey, is this you guys? These special forces ended up finding a cache of weapons and videos and all types of things. And all the videos were of us, of our strategies, what we do when we come across IEDs. At that point, we knew we were actually making a difference. We were being watched so much. That's what motivated us to go out every mission, because we knew we were making a difference, so much to a point that we were being watched 24/7 every time we went out. That is my stance on that.
Being from Illinois, over in Iraq, I mean, that's not a short little trip, I would imagine. It takes a minute to get there. Probably a little more than an 8-hour flight, I would imagine, especially if you're flying commercial. I don't know. Maybe you're in one of those big airplanes that I used to see as a kid. Was that your first experience really with death, seeing it firsthand?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I was there that night. And then 3 months later, we ended up losing another soldier. I was there for that night. For Christmas Day, a lot of other things went wrong that night for us. That was the first time I've ever actually felt expendable. At that point, a lot of issues I developed. The trust issues was a big thing. Didn't trust anybody. The only people I ever trusted were the people that I went out on mission with, because those were the people that I was with, and we had to have each other's back. Wouldn't believe people or wouldn't take their word on it unless I actually physically saw it in front of me or actually did happen. Big deal for me continuing being in the military and then also coming out.
What made you want to get out? I mean, there's a lot of times I've heard folks say, I could have stayed. I wanted to stay for whatever reason. What led you to get out? Why didn't you want to stay? Is it because of things you saw over there, or were there other extenuating circumstances?
The Army was changing while I was in, especially going from Bush to Obama. There was a lot of changes. I didn't like where the changes were going. Another point of it was that there's a saying that you do not want to become dependent on the military. Get out of the military before you become dependent on it. I saw a lot of guys that were dependent on the military that they couldn't leave. I didn't want to be at that point. I also wanted to start something different. After my 5 years of active duty, I decided to leave. I came back from Germany and I spent 3 years in active reserve. I just decided, I need to find another way to go through life. I don't regret it.
Having maybe trust issues in general. Now, again, I have no combat experience. Zero. I mean, other than my make-believe imagination as kids, and that's obviously a whole different ballgame than real life with people shooting at you and trying to blow you guys up. How fast did you learn to trust those guys that you were with? I mean, was it instantaneous? Was it just, okay, we have to do so many missions and then I can trust Joey or I can trust Billy? I'm obviously making up names. And then the other thing you talk about guys being, dependent on the military and relying on that. That still sounds like maybe there's a little bit of a trust issue there for you. So maybe speak to those if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, some of the guys in my platoon I was actually in basic training with. So I knew these guys from the start of our career. Just being around them, just being in the training, be able to know what other guys are thinking at the same time as things are going on. We just really developed that chemistry, built on it, and we all knew that we were in this together. None of us were going to get out of it, so all we had was each other's backs, and that's who I trusted. That's why a lot of other guys, we only trusted ourselves, because if we don't trust ourselves, we're not going to get out of it. It was more of the outside, more of the higher up decision making. That's where the trust was kind of being lost. As being dependent on the military, I had one guy, his wife had lupus. The military was paying for her medication, paying for her treatment. And if he ever got out, he wouldn't be able to afford any of that. The military was paying all of that, so he was kind of stuck. He had to be care for his wife, care for his kids, things like that. That's kind of what I mean about being dependent on the military. Some guys have a lot of kids, and they can't get out because they can't support the kids. The military supports that. I just never wanted to get to that point. I also, if I ever decided to have a family, I never wanted to put my family through those situations. I've been deployed twice, and we always have so-called party before we go on deployment, and seeing the family's faces. I never wanted to put my family through that. I never wanted to see those faces on them or feel that kind of pain about leaving them. I never wanted to do that to my family, so that was another reason why I got out. I mean, I enjoyed my time there. I got a little flack for it when I left. It was my decision. I just couldn't steer away from that.
You also talked about there was almost like a shift between President Bush's administration and then the Obama administration. What shifts did you see? Again, not getting too political, but in your view, in your mind, what did you see that was so different? I mean, was there major differences? Was there just minor stuff? I mean, I don't know. Help me again understand that.
So, being a bigger guy, I was always the gunners for our patrols. When you're the gunner, you have your SOP, so your standard operating procedure, or your escalation of force. There's always rules that you have to follow when you're dealing with civilians or combatants and things of that nature. My first deployment, I was for 15 months. During those 15 months, my escalation of force maybe changed only twice. When Obama was in, I was deployed for about 11, 12 months. Our escalation of force changed about 9 to 10 times. More steps were added, or the steps were rotated or whatever. A lot of guys got in trouble because they weren't following those procedures or those steps. Guys were getting demoted. Guys were getting loss of pay for these things, or even being tried for it. It was happening left and right, to a point where gunners, we really couldn't protect ourselves anymore. It was almost getting to a point where we might actually have to call Obama and say, hey, can we attack these people? And it just got really frustrating. And I even had an incident where I showed escalation of force, and I got questioned very heavily on it. I simply said, well, I'm going to protect my patrol. I really don't care who it is. At that point, I'm like, you know what? I got to go. I can't have my life this such of a thin, on a tightrope. I just didn't want to deal with it. And that was another reason why I left. That's one of the small examples that I felt it was changing.
One of the things that I've noticed too, that I've heard at least through the years, is that when a new president comes in, there is definitely a shift in the military, and they feel it. They don't like the changes that come, especially, and I've heard this too, especially when it's one party or the other. Like if it's a Republican administration and then it goes to Democrat or vice versa, sometimes there is quite the shift, and they don't like that. They don't like change. They don't like to do change. And in the military, at least again, my experience has been change is nothing that ever happens instantaneous, super quick. It is always a slow turning motion. Emphasis added. Doing the 2 deployments, did you learn anything from the first one to the second one? Any takeaways that you had? Or, I mean, obviously the Christmas Day event is very scarring. I would imagine. I can't even imagine what that must have been like. But was there anything from those 2 experiences that you were like, man, I really learned this, or I really took this away, or I don't know why I went back the second time? I mean, I don't know. Help me understand. Again, if it was so traumatic the first time, why go back a second time?
Because we're forced to. Our first deployment was beyond words. We were only supposed to be there for 9 months. Ended up getting extended 3 times to 15 months. That psychological aspect of it was unbelievable, especially for all of us being extended that many times and not knowing if we were actually going to get out. But in those 15 months, our unit alone found 126 IEDs. And that's not including the ones that blew up on us or the fake ones that we found. Going into my second deployment, our job was such in high demand that they needed us out there. We were supposed to have a year off. It's not technically a year. Guys might have only been with their families maybe 7 or 8 months out of those 12 months because you have to go to the field for training for a couple of months, shooting gunnery ranges, things like that. So it's not technically a year that you're away from it all. Going into our second deployment, it wasn't the same. I believe we only found 2 IDs in those 12 months. But we were in a different part. First deployment, we were in Baghdad. Our second deployment, we were out in a small town called Hilla. It wasn't really that much of a hotbed as it was in Baghdad. I was still with those same guys that I was with my first deployment. The SOPs that we had and we created actually became staples in the Army to follow. Use them as we went into our second deployment. Even after our second deployment, guys went on to different duty stations and they implemented those SOPs to their units because that's what worked for us. That's what kept us safe and being able to do our job. Something that was really good because you build that chemistry. And another reason why I left, because after that second deployment, we had new leadership coming to Germany, and that for some reason that new leadership was saying, why have these guys been together for 3-4 years? We need to separate them. We can't have mingling of higher ups and lower. In this fraternization, they separated everybody. We have to have new people with new people. And I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I don't get paid to think like that, so I really can't make those decisions. That was another reason why I left. I'm like, why would you separate guys when they know each other's movements, know what to do at certain times? It just made no sense to me whatsoever, and I'm just like, that's something I can't get behind either.
First off, I want to acknowledge what you said and what you shared so far. To me, it's fascinating, but I also, if again, maybe I'm misreading the room, so been guilty of that a few times or two. It feels almost frustrating. It feels almost like I'm hearing you say, I trusted the guys that were next to me in the cab that were searching bombs with me. I trusted those guys, man. We were thick and thin. We were solid. But it's when you get upper leadership involved, that's when I would get scared because they're putting our life in danger. As you mentioned, just to kind of recap a little bit, reset the room. You didn't go out on Christmas. You shouldn't have gone out on Christmas, especially at night on Christmas. I mean, night in general seems scary in Iraq. Let me just say, I think I would rather walk through South Central LA at night than I would Iraq. Just saying, just me as a person. The thing that I keep coming back to is I feel like our leadership in some respects failed, not only maybe you, but our military. Do you have that mindset, or am I just, again, misreading the room?
Yeah, a lot of it was frustrating. I mean, when I wrote my book, I put a lot of those things in, frustrating with upper leadership, more of them thinking about their careers rather than others. And it did get frustrating at times, especially with a lot of people. Everybody was frustrated, especially being in Germany. It's almost kind of like a deployment. It's nothing like the States. It's almost like its own world out there that we're actually in, and are kind of cut off from the States. It's a completely different lifestyle. Being away made it more frustrating. Bases in the States, but there's maybe tens of thousands of soldiers on one base. And our base in Germany, we only had about 5,000 in the whole unit. So it's kind of like a small town. Yeah, it was frustrating because we were the only ones out there. It was something that we had to overcome. We just had to go out and do our jobs and rely on each other.
You mentioned the second time wasn't necessarily a choice. Well, maybe the first time wasn't either. It was kind of an order. And I think sometimes normal people, civilians, we'll call them, don't understand the difference between somebody, a boss telling you like, hey, go do your job, blah, blah, blah. But when an order comes down, it is a different dynamic. Maybe speak to that because, again, I think there's so much, like my boss tells me all the time, hey, go take care of this. And I do. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll take care of it later. If he says, hey, go do whatever, I might wait 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Okay. Oh, right. I got to go do what so-and-so said. But for you, military life, that's not how it works compared to civilian life. How is that different in your opinion?
So in the civilian world, if you fuck up, you might get fired. That's pretty much the end of it. In the military, they don't fire you. You're still there. So what they might do is they might take you and put you in a job where you're out of sight and out of mind. We had a lieutenant, wasn't in my unit, but it was in one of the other platoons. I guess he gave an order while they're out on mission, and like almost like put two soldiers' lives in danger when he knew that he was going to put them in danger. It was really messed up situation. Well, he lost his command as the platoon leader, and they put him in the job where he would take pictures for ceremonies. Yeah, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind job. They put you in a place where you can't fuck up anything, and you're stuck there. You have no say whatsoever. That's the big thing that's different. You might be put in a desk job that nobody ever sees you.
You mentioned the book. Why write the book? What's the purpose behind it? Because again, I meet authors from time to time. Well, it's a revenue stream. I'm like, okay, well, that's awesome. And they're like, well, I have this really compelling story and everyone needs to know about it. Again, another awesome reason. But for you, I think you have a deeper meaning and a deeper reason. What's your reason?
When I got out of the military, I struggled a lot. Nightmares, trouble sleeping. Got to a point where I was just drinking a lot just to get away from it. And it went on for years, basically kind of like a shell of myself almost. I got out in 2010. 2019, I had a breakdown in my kitchen. I just completely lost it. All the emotions that I had just came out of me. And I was such a rut that my throat was just completely burning from all the emotions I was letting out. I realized this is the first step to actually finally heal myself in this process. A month went by. I was actually feeling better. Sleeping wasn't as bad. I started talking with the family members of the soldiers that we lost. I spoke with them during the years. I've met up with them a couple of times. I just wanted to get down to the deeper meaning of what were they told when we lost the soldiers. I know when I was in, we had to fill out an incident report for both of those times. I caught wind from one of the guys that was in higher up saying that a lot of things were changed in those reports. So I was kind of upset about that. And then I actually asked the family members, well, what were you given? Like, well, they were given a piece of paper that died in combat, and it was like a one-sentence explanation of what happened. That threw me over the edge. When I would meet with them, they would always ask what happened. I would never give the full details because I was always worried about what were they told and what they weren't told. I even came across an incident where I said something that they didn't know, and I just felt really like, oh shit. When I was at this moment, I'm like, you know what? I can't hold this in anymore. I got to tell what happened and tell what we did. And I decided to make videos of this, but I really didn't have like a platform to get these videos out. And I just decided to write. So I wrote down the incidences. I wrote down every detail. But as I was writing, I was kind of like, you know what? This actually feels kind of good. I'm feeling a little bit better. So I decided, you know what? Let me start from the beginning. Started my time in college all the way up until the end of when I got out. I just kept writing and writing every story, every detail. And as I was writing, I felt like the weight was lifting off of my shoulders. I was putting everything on the page. I didn't have to hold everything in anymore. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to not leave anything out. And I didn't. I just felt so much better. And I had it put together. And I decided, you know what? I'm just going to put out a book that'd be better. And after I wrote the book, didn't have any nightmares. I was actually sleeping. I wasn't drinking anymore. Or even now, it's been already been 3 years now. I hardly ever drink. I might drink at like a party and have like one or two or something like that, but I don't drink anymore because I don't need that, I guess, nourishment or whatever, that coping mechanism anymore. It was more of my therapy. I just wanted to show people what we did and what we went through because a lot of people don't know what we actually go through.
Wow. First off, let me just commend you for that as well, from one human to another. To sit down and write that out, to walk back through those events, to walk back through that night that I think will probably forever be with you. I think it is so commendable for you to say to the family, like, no, let me tell you what happened. Let me share with you where we were, what exactly took place. Because let's face it, going back to that trust thing, I think if you polled 100 people right now, go to any downtown you want, doesn't matter, Illinois, Oregon, we'll go North Carolina because I love North Carolina, wherever we are, right? right? I bet if you pulled 100 people, I would be shocked if every single 100 person there said, no, 100% I trust the government. I trust the military, 100%. Now, military government may be different. Do I trust our military? I bet we got a patriots out there that would say, oh yeah, I trust our military. You say, do you trust our government right now in this moment? Well, what do I trust them with? Just in general, do you trust them? Do you agree with me? Do you think most people would probably say, nope, don't trust them?
Yeah, maybe one or two.
And that's my point. Is I think so many times when things happen, when we see it on CNN or we see it on Fox or MSN or whatever where we get our news from, Facebook, who knows where, social media, we always have this thing like, well, did that happen? Did that not? And that's what I love about what you're sharing with us today. Where can someone get the book? Where's the best place? And then maybe share if somebody has an event or a group or who knows what, coming up, and they're maybe looking for somebody to share maybe these type of experiences. How can folks connect with you, and what's the best way they can do that?
So my book is called The Bomb Hunter Story, My Life Clearing the Roads of Iraq. It's on Amazon, so it's either on paperback or Kindle. I also kind of do TikTok too, stuff about the military, jokes about the military. My handle's Sapper720, so SAPPER 720. It's something to give back a little bit and to kind of explain more of the little things that we do. I even had a Humvee purchase that we have, and we take the car shows. We take the Humvee to the car shows because, there's mostly kids there. So, the kids are kind of a little bit bored, but when they see that, that's cool. Then we take a picture with it, and we allow that to happen. But a lot of the times what I didn't notice when I started taking them was a lot of veterans coming up to me. They were just starting to talk. They would just talk about their time in the military. Like, it wasn't prompt or provoked or anything in that matter. Sometimes I'd be there half an hour just talking with this person about their military. And then afterwards, it'd be like, you know what? I never spoke about my military until now, and I don't even know why I'm talking about it right now. I started noticing that happen a lot. I'm like, you know what? This is actually something. It's actually a way to give back. It's a little bit of a therapy session for me and whoever is coming up to me and talking. If I can make their life feel a little bit better just by bonding over something, it does help out a lot. It was just something that happened spontaneously. It wasn't something that I actually planned on doing. It's something that I'm able to give back.
Yeah, I love the idea of giving back. There's a future generation coming up. My daughter's 15 and she's going to be graduating here in the next 2 years. And I would imagine she's going to have some male classmates that make the decision, much like you did, much like my dad did, to join the military. What would be your advice to somebody who's maybe on the fence, on that teeter-totter perhaps? Should I go? Should I not? Should I sign? Should I not? What would be your advice to somebody?
So when I joined the military, I had two uncles that were in Vietnam. One was in the Navy, one was in the Army. The one that was in the Army, I never knew he was a combat engineer until I actually talked to him. I asked him the same thing, and what he told me was, I will never tell you to join the military. I will tell you my experience. I'll tell you what I went through. I'll tell you how it helped me, but I will never tell you to join, because if I tell you to join and you die, your blood is on my conscience. And plus your mother would kill me. I was upset that he gave me that answer. I was really upset. But as I went through the military and as I got out, I was being asked that same question, and I understood what he meant by it. I have people all the time ask me, should I join or should I not? I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to tell you. I'm just going to tell you my experience, and you take away from that experience. I'm never going to make that decision for you. Someone might not want to hear. Yeah, if I tell you to join, I don't need your blood on my conscience or your life on my conscience. So that's kind of my answer.
I think that's a great one. After all, some gave some, but few gave all, right? Well, we do this thing at the end of the show. It's called Senseless. It's this silly question, as I said. This silly thing we do, it's not a game. It's just silliness. So I have these 6 questions involving our senses, and then 6 is a wild card. Don't worry, you don't have to answer all 6. We're just going to pick randomly out of a die. Now, hear me. I tried to get a Northern Illinois Cup, the Huskies, right? If I remember right. I did have to Google it to make sure I was getting the mascot right, but I did already know it because they'd been in the NCAA tournament a few times, if I remember right. But I do have a North Carolina Cup. Is that okay that we use this? Camp Lejeune, I don't know if you ever made it out there because it's not, Army territory, if you will.
No, I have buddies in North Carolina, and they're Tar Heel fans.
There you go. See? There we go. Tar Heel fans all the way around the world. Maybe they'll win some tournaments here in March. Who knows? All right. I'm going to roll for you. Shake it up real nice. All right. Number 6 is this. There's the proof. Number 6. And that's this, is you get a weekend. Now, we define a weekend as Friday night at 6 p.m. That's when the weekend starts for me. So that's when I make the weekend start for everyone else, even though it's still Friday. So Friday at 6 p.m. and we go till 11:59 Sunday night. We try to cram everything we can. So you get a weekend with someone. Doesn't have to be alive. They can be dead. They can be wherever. Well, who's the person? One person, by the way. And then what are you going to do with this one person?
Like someone famous you're talking about, or?
It can be anybody you want. This is your question. You receive that as you receive that. Kind of like your military decision. It's up to you. Like, is it famous? Is it not? I don't know.
The one person that I would want to be around and pick their brain is actually Mel Brooks. Growing up, he was my favorite director. I love his movies. Young Frankenstein is my favorite movie of all time. Any piece of information or interviews I could get from him, just hearing his stories and how his ideas came. I mean, I even try to watch some old episodes with him and Sid Caesar, and like when they're on TV. Oh my God, now the show is like blinking my mind now. I watched all his movies. I even watched his Broadway plays that he did for Young Frankenstein. It's just someone that I would like to sit down with and just pick their brain, what they're thinking, and especially being with the type of people that he had in his movies. Gene Wilder, Melanie Kahn, who tragically passed away at an early age. Was one of the people that's fascinated me all my life. I would enjoy just spending time with and picking their brain.
Yeah, Mel Brooks also did Spaceballs, which I was always a big fan of. So being a Star Wars guy, I always thought that was funny. And Men in Tights, who doesn't love Men in Tights? Also a fun one too. So I do want to say, man, first off, thank you for your service.
Oh, no problem. You're welcome.
That needs to be acknowledged. And then I really just want to say thank you for the time that you gave us today. I really appreciate it. And man, thank you for getting the word out and spreading the word as far as PTSD and trauma and trust and all that. And I just want to thank you for writing your book and being brave enough to do that. So thanks for that too.
You're welcome.
All right, guys and gals, kids and campers alike, that is it. That is all. That is our show today. Now, let me ask you a question right now before we jump out of here. Here's my question for you. We've had a few military folks through the years of doing the show. We have. We've had guys, we've had gals. I don't think we've had every branch yet. I think we still need some Navy guys and maybe some Air Force guys. But here's my question for you. The next time you see a military person, your response and your actions will be what? Think about that for a second. What will you do the next time you see a military personnel? Will it be to say thank you? Will it be to look at them with disdain? Will it be to look at them with heartache and heartbreak? Or will it just be a smile and not say anything? Kind of make eye contact, give them a smile, give them a nod, and keep going. Or will it be to enter into a conversation with them? Because I think that's the best answer. Truly. It's great to say thank you. Hopefully you don't look at them with disdain. That was not the right answer, by the way, because this man that we just sat with put his life on the line. Now, again, not to get political, people can question that. Why was he there? Shouldn't have been there. Okay, fine. We're not going to have that debate right now. This is not the time nor the place for that. But I will say this. My hope and prayer is next time you see somebody in the military, you can look at them straight in the eye, shake their hand and say, thank you. May I ask you why you served? Enter into that conversation. Let me challenge you on that this week today. And before I let you go, do not forget this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.